A ghost story. I was an American male, on loose in Belgium in the late 80s. A tiny village I lived in was called Cameron Castle, and it was only a few kilometers north of French frontier. The town was truly nondescript, and the ancient abbey remained only interesting feature it possessed. The abbey's remains stood on 50 acres of land just beyond the town, with a great house, a tower, forest, lakes, and catacombs. The latter caught my attention as soon as I learned of it. I investigated the tunnels, both historically and physically. Originally, it seemed monks in the late 1500s connected the abbey to a church in nearby town of Lens with underground tunnels, and it may have even gone as far as Mons. This is no small feat, as Mons rests 20 kilometers from the abbey and Cameron Castle. It then appears that Hitler could not leave something like an underground tunnel alone, and had to wall it up during Belgium's occupation because too many of his soldiers got lost trying to chase out resistance fighters. There was evidence that down some of the underground corridors there was newer wall, and in all forward advances, a room was filled to the ceiling with a pile of rocks. Despite the diminished area of the tunnels where they still held my attention, I soon knew every available inch. When I was not in the catacombs, I was walking through the abbey's forest or around lakes till late afternoons. It was on one of these lazy Sunday walks that changed my life forever. Call me paranoid if you wish, but the late 80s in Europe was no time for an American to walk down the streets alone. It seemed that the Nazi party was not quite as dead as we had led to believe, and chance encounters with skinheads became a very real possibility, and a very real danger as well. For this reason, I took to carrying a certain semi-automatic friend of mine under my coat on my left side to give a would-be assailant 45 reasons to rethink his position. I would not discuss my occupation at the time, or why I could get away from this. Suffice to say that I could, and leave it at that. I walk around the largest of the abbey's lakes late on a Sunday afternoon when I saw a woman about 200 meters away from me near one of the entrances of the tunnels. I could tell she wore a dress, but she had some kind of cloak over it, hiding any details of the garment. I did notice her figure, but few other details. There was no obvious evidence that she was in distress or need of assistance. It was just a feeling I got as I walked towards her. And she moved towards the catacomb door. Reflexively, I adjust the comforting chunk of finely milled steel under my left arm, reassuring myself that it was still there, even though I knew it was there. By the time I reached the door to the tunnels, she had disappeared inside with only one glance back at me as I approached. The late afternoon sun was casting many long shadows, and I was too far away to see her face clearly, save for her eyes. Her eyes were simultaneously bothered me and drew me to her. Loose stones crunched under her foot as I left the paved trail for the gravel road to the catacomb entrance. I did not notice at the time, but she had made no noise on the gravel. My approach to the door had been from the side, and I did not actually see her open the door to go in. When I reached the door, I had to grasp and engage the metallic thumb latch and swing the door wide on rusty hinges. it never entered my conscious mind that I hadn't heard the hinges when she walked in. My subconscious was pulling double duty, trying to keep me alive by taking over my right arm and moving my hand to the butt of a heavy Colt 1911 A1 in my shoulder ring. I had been in these tunnels often, enough to know where I was. The entryway behind the doors had 2 exits. The one on my right led to the greatest area of the tunnels. The exit in front of me was a little more than rubble-covered stairway that branched into 2 separate short passages that both dead-ended. As I paused for my eyes to adjust, I heard a faint, indeterminate sound from the direction in front of me. My eyes had not righted themselves, but I moved forward anyways. I know these tunnels. She may need me. As I moved, my eyes cleared, and I noticed a faint glow, like the match up a tunnel that I knew stopped at some of the Fuhrer's matrices. I rounded the last bend. I saw her. She had her back to me, and she stared at the wall. Her hair was long and straight, and the deepest raven black. Her curves were not of the kind to get lost in the crowd either. As I stood there, mesmerized by every inch of her, she began to turn to me. Her face was a mask of death. There were no eyes in the sockets, and a dried skull as she looked at me. There was no skin on the bones of her hands as she raised them towards me. What happened next, I pieced together later. My instinctual reaction was to bring up the gun in a perfect waiver stance and dump the entire club into it. I also started to back away from the same time and fell. This must have been what I had done. For what I came to my senses, I was laying on my back in the pitch dark. I fished out a Zippo from my pocket and surveyed the area. I found no woman, no blood, no appreciable time that had been passed according to my watch. No rational reason that I could see before, and now it was dark, and no real desire to stay in the tunnels 1 second longer. I quit the catacombs before anyone could investigate the shots and hurried home. At home, I discovered some unnerving facts. I had cut my head when I fell, and when I washed the blood out of my hair, I found the most startling gray streak over both my temples that had not been there mere hours earlier. I really wanted this just to be some kind of horrible dream. But the more time passed, the more I began to remember. This seemed totally opposite to a normal dream that one would usually forget by the end of the morning coffee. This dream was getting more vivid as time passed. I remember the sharp pain in my gut and coughing, or no, choking. Yes, that was it, choking. I was gasping for air. I could not breathe, and my poor sweet little girl, the child I clutched in my arms, dead. My husband had taken away, and must surely be dead also. What? I nearly fell. What was I thinking? I did not have a child, much less a husband. Then I saw her. She was standing right next to me, in my own house. She was not the skeleton she had been. Her smooth skin was the palest white, and now looked as it must have been in life. A little shorter than me, jet black hair, even death. She was beautiful. She was pulling her hand back as if she had been touching my shoulder. I understand now. The SS must have caught her, and other resistance fighters in the tunnels. When they walled them up, All she wanted is a decent burial. This is not too much to ask. I'm leaving now with a pick and a shovel to do the right thing. The labyrinth behind the walls is unmapped. I do not know where she died. The only hope she stays around long enough to lead me back out of the tunnels when my work for her is done. If she does not, however, I leave this testament to anyone who comes looking for me, that they may at least have a clue as to where my body may lie.